Welcome to episode 3 of Pandemics of the Past. I'm your host Kritik, and today we'll take a closer look at the public health response to the Hong Kong flu pandemic and how governments and health organizations around the world face one of the first truly global influenza outbreaks of the 20th century. As the Hong Kong flu began to spread in 1968, health authorities around the world quickly realized that they were facing a serious challenge. The World Health Organization and other global bodies were instrumental in tracking the spread of the virus. But one of the biggest hurdles was the speed at which the virus moved. Within a matter of months, cases were being reported across multiple continents, overwhelming local health systems. One of the top priorities for public health officials was the development of a vaccine. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in collaboration with the WHO and laboratories worldwide, worked tirelessly to identify the virus and create an effective vaccine. However, vaccine development takes time. Scientists first had to isolate the virus, then produce a vaccine strain that could be mass-produced. This process was complicated by the unique genetic makeup of the H3N2, which had never been seen before in humans. By the time the first vaccines became available in late 1968, the virus had already made its way around the world. The delay in vaccine production meant that many countries had to rely on other public health measures to slow the spread of the disease. Despite the slow rollout of vaccines, governments and health organizations ramped up public health campaigns to reduce transmission. These efforts focused on basic hygiene measures, something that still holds true today. People were urged to wash their hands frequently, covering their mouths when coughing, and avoid large gatherings. Schools in some countries were temporarily closed, and businesses were encouraged to adjust working hours to minimize contact between employees. In the US, public health officials faced criticism for what some saw as a slow response to the pandemic. The federal government, still learning from past experience with the 1957 Asian flu, worked to distribute the limited vaccines available to high-risk populations, like the elderly and those with chronic health conditions. But the vaccine shortage exposed the need for better pandemic preparedness, particularly when it came to scaling up production quickly in the face of a global outbreak. Internationally, the pandemic highlighted the importance of collaboration. The WHO played a key role in coordinating efforts between countries, helping to track the spread of the virus and disseminate information about treatment and prevention. It also marked one of the first times that air travel had such a profound impact on the pandemic spread, underscoring the need for international surveillance of infectious disease. While many countries implemented measures to curb the spread, such as quarantines and travel restrictions, they were not always effective as hoped. The global nature of the pandemic, combined with the speed of transmission, made it difficult to contain. Nevertheless, the lessons learned from the Hong Kong flu would later inform global responses to future pandemics, including the H1N1 pandemic in 2009 and the more recently COVID-19 pandemic. In the end, the public health response to the Hong Kong flu was a mixed success. While millions of lives were saved thanks to vaccination efforts and public health campaigns, the pandemic revealed the vulnerabilities in global health systems and the need for faster and more coordinated action in future outbreaks. In our final episode, we'll explore the lasting legacy of the Hong Kong flu. We'll examine how the pandemics had influenced modern influenza research, vaccine development, and our overall understanding of pandemics. The lessons from the 1968 pandemic continue to shape public health strategies even today. The Hong Kong flu didn't simply vanish after the pandemic's peak in 1968 and 1969. In fact, the H3N2 strain of influenza A became part of the seasonal flu viruses that circulate every year. Even today, more than 50 years later, H3N2 continues to evolve, mutating slightly each flu season, which requires public health officials to constantly adjust flu vaccines to provide effective protection. One of the most important legacies of the Hong Kong flu was how it changed our approach to vaccination. Scientists learned that influenza viruses mutate frequently, meaning that a single vaccine development for one season might not be effective for the next one. This realization led to the practice of producing and updating flu vaccines annually, based on predictions of which strains will be more prevalent. The global response to the Hong Kong flu also underscored the importance of timely vaccine production. While the vaccine was eventually developed, the delay in its availability highlighted the need for faster vaccine creation and distribution in future pandemics. This lesson would later prove invaluable during subsequent outbreaks, including the H1N1 pandemic in 2009 and the COVID-19 pandemic, where the race to develop vaccines became a key factor in controlling the spread. Beyond vaccination, the pandemic revealed significant weakness in healthcare infrastructure. Hospitals and health systems, particularly in low-resource countries, were overwhelmed by the sheer number of cases, leading to shortages of beds, ventilators, and medical supplies. This highlighted the need for governments to invest in more robust and scalable healthcare systems that could handle future health emergencies. Another key takeaway from the Hong Kong flu was the value of international cooperation. The World Health Organization played an essential role in monitoring the spread of the virus, coordinating research and sharing information with health agencies worldwide. The pandemic showed how interconnected the world had become and how a virus could rapidly cross borders, making global coordination critical to any pandemic response. This collaboration is now a cornerstone of modern pandemic preparedness, with networks like the Global Influenza Surveillance and Response System helping to track flu viruses and other emerging pathogens. The pandemic also had a lasting impact on public health communication. Governments learned that timely, clear communication with the public could save lives. Campaigns promoting hygiene measures like frequent hand washing and avoiding large crowds became standard responses to future flu outbreaks. These public health messages were echoed decades later in the response to COVID-19, when many of the principles were applied to contain the virus. Another critical lesson was the need for flexibility in the workplace and in education during the pandemic. Many schools were closed, and businesses faced significant disruptions due to absenteeism during the Hong Kong flu. Today, as we saw with the COVID-19, businesses and educational institutions have adapted by moving operations online, enabling remote work and learning. These changes have helped reduce the impact of pandemics on society and the economy. Ultimately, the Hong Kong flu pandemic taught us that pandemics are not isolated events. They have far-reaching consequences that affect every aspect of society, from healthcare systems to economies to how we interact with each other on a daily basis. It also taught us that preparedness is key. The faster we can identify, understand, and respond to a new virus, the better we can protect lives and minimize the disruption of society. In today's world, with increasing globalization and travel, vigilance against emerging pathogens is more important than ever. The lessons from the 1968 pandemic continue to guide our responses to new pandemics, reminding us that no country can tackle these crises alone. Public health is and always will be a shared global responsibility. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history of the Hong Kong flu. The legacy of this pandemic is still with us, influencing how we respond to influenza and other infectious disease. I'm your host Kritik, and I'm signing off.